Good evening, y'all. This is Spencer Keck with the Hillbilly Think Tank. Y'all, we're coming at you live from Tunnel Hills here in Hardin County, where we know that life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness is what makes life worthwhile. And y'all, we right now are in a crisis in our country. We've got, as we know, 5,000 troops at the Strait of Hormuz, waiting to find out if these 5,000 Marines are going to be sent into combat. Well, this is causing, of course, our gas prices to go up. It's also causing the price of urea to go up. Urea is what we have to have in order to engage in industrial agriculture, because urea is needed to make industrial fertilizer. Well, 30% of that urea comes from the Gulf area and has to go through that Strait of Hormuz. So in addition to gas prices going up, that's going to drive up the cost of tractor fuel for all the farm implements. It's also going to drive up the cost of the big rig fuel that hauls our animals and produce to the market. That's going to jack up the price of our food at the grocery store. And then if the fertilizer costs more, it's going to cost more to grow our food in an industrial scale. And that's going to jack the price of our food up. So I think it is absolutely, high time to get back to victory gardens. So again, this is the Hillbilly Think Tank. I am Spencer Keck, and I'm coming at you live from Tunnel Hills, where we know that life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness is what makes life worth living. In order to get true liberty, we need to be free from the chains of industrial agriculture. We need to get back to regenerative farming. We can do that on a small scale, and we can also do it on a large scale. So let's listen to some farmers talk about doing it on a large scale. It can be done. It is being done. And let's also talk about urban farming. That's what you can do in the city or on half an acre, right around your house. You can actually grow plenty of food for your whole family if you just do it in the right way. And it's possible. We did this during World War II with the Victory Gardens. But let's look at doing it first on a grand scale.
Hey, welcome to the show. Thanks for tuning in as always. We begin in Lake City, Iowa, where Mark Schleisman and his family had not one, not two, but three 300-bushel corn yield plots in 2025. Yeah, that was good enough for the top 3 spots in the NCGA's Iowa strip till irrigated category. But conservation, not high yields, is the name of the game for the Schleismans, who also no-till their soybeans. Mark says he uses a cover crop on 100% of his 5,000 acres.
Cereal rye is always our base, but we always run a mix as well. Either we'll have oats with it, if it's something we're going to graze heavily in the fall. If it's not going to get grazed heavily in the fall, we'll just run rape, sometimes turnips or radishes, but primarily rape with our rye. If it's a field with a lot of point rows, we'll go ahead and do it with a drone. If it's soybean fields that are going to come off early, we got a vertical till machine set up with an air seeder on the front of it. And some of the corn acres will come in with a high clearance machine that has an air machine on it as well. Our cover crops, honestly, are full width tillage. It replaces that. The root system from that rye or the rape and radishes, what have you out there, that's our tillage, full width, because you got cover crop growing everywhere. It really, for us, that loosens the soil, opens it up, creates the channels for the water to infiltrate. You just think it does everything for us.
And a mix of cereal rye and rapeseed was grazed on Schleisman's 317-bushel contest-winning plot. He terminated the covers about 5 days before planting. Now to hilly southwest Wisconsin, where Michael E. Berg received the prestigious Leopold Conservation Award for his long-term commitment to soil health practices.
All right, hopefully everybody can hear me. All right, so hopefully you guys got a little bit of a glimpse there of what it's like to, do traditional farming, but go back to regenerative farming. Not rely on having to use commercial fertilizer, but growing those cover crops that put the nitrogen and all the nutrients back in the soils and get us to be able to have less poison or no poison actually in our soil. And if we did for years use poison, then we can get away from that with these cover crops and regenerative farming. We can reclaim the soil of our land. So, man, there's no time like now to make this happen. The biggest thing is we've got to have the resolve to do it. And we've got to realize this is calling for a paradigm shift. A paradigm shift in farming, a paradigm shift in how we look at the food we eat, and a paradigm shift in, hey, we don't just trust anyone to give us food and claim that it's safe for us. We've seen such a high rise in cancer and all kinds of diseases and illnesses that we didn't have for, the first few hundred years of our country. But just over the last 50 years, 60 years, when we shifted to industrial agricultural farming after World War II, then that's when we made this big leap into basically poisoning ourselves. So how did that happen? Well, once World War II came to an end, we had so many factories that had shifted to making bombs. And what do you need to make bombs? You need urea, you need nitrogen. And we had now huge factories full of these things, but they weren't making bombs anymore. So they said, hey, where can we sell this stuff and use this stuff now? Let's convince the farmers to put it on their soil, convince them they need it for farming. Before that, all of our crops were grown using regenerative farming. We've been doing it for hundreds of years. Civilizations have been doing it for thousands of years, but we got completely away from it. We got rid of using cover crops, and these cover crops keep the soil from being washed away with each rain. We've lost so much topsoil since we started industrial farming, and the soil that we do have is really just chemicals being pumped on what we call soil, which really has no more nutrients anymore. And so plants that we eat are nutrientless. We don't have the natural mulch that comes from having cover crops. We're not using natural fertilizers such as cow manure, horse manure, sheep manure, all these, animals that we have that could provide natural sources of nitrogen in the soil. If we use the crops that he talked about there in that video, as you're growing those cover crops, they're putting the vitamins back into the soil, and once it's time for growing things like corn, like they're talking about, they've already got natural sources of vitamins, not empty sources, such as you get from industrial fertilizer. Now, guys, why am I talking about this on this channel? I'm running for magistrate here in District 3, Hardin County. Well, here in Hardin County, we're a very rural, agricultural county. Yes, we have Elizabethtown, which I live on the edge of. Right behind me is a farm with cow pastures and cows. That's been here since the 1800s. And all around us, we've got, I've got a whole community of folks like me who've got about an acre or less. Some people might have a little bit more, but we've got a whole, I've got neighbors to the left and the right of me and across the street. Like I said, back behind me are cows and a big old farmhouse. Well, but all of us could tap into the $800 million that's being set aside for regenerative farming right now. And this is under the Make America Healthy Again. One of the good things that could come out of this. But like I said the other night, when Doge ran amok and fired so many thousands of USDA workers, we lost the apparatus to spread out this $800 million. Hopefully, the NRSC will be able to dole it out in conjunction with the USDA. And that's what when I talked to our conservation chief here in the county, Vincent Thompson, he said that's what he expects to happen. So we got a lot of farmers that need a leg up after seeing the soybean markets go to crap, will actually disappear with all these tariffs in China and Canada. And we want to see our farmers able to tap into this regenerative farming money. All right. Looks like we might have Starz on now. Starz, are you there? Can you hear me? Starz is going to be coming at us live from up north. When she gets on here, I'll let her introduce herself. All right. So, but in the meantime, all right, let's see what we got here for folks watching. So we've got copycats on. The knowledge of our ancestors has been insulted and dismissed for a long time. We used to know how to be pretty dependent on food growth. Yes, think back to, hey, the Native Americans tried to tell the Europeans how to properly grow their food. And if you remember the story of the folks in Jamestown who were starving for their first year or two here because they wouldn't use the natural way of growing crops here in America that the natives wanted to teach them. Same thing happened up in Plymouth Colony. So they starved for quite some time until they finally listened to the way the natives said, hey, grow your crops here this way in the United States. You can't do it the European way. But of course, what did the Europeans do? They insisted eventually, once they made it through the starvation years, of doing it the European way, having monoculture and things. It's not good for us. So we also, our grandparents, great-grandparents, and go on back a ways, they knew how to do more than just monoculture. They couldn't have survived on a monoculture. All the way up to our victory gardens in World War II. Folks had this knowledge, even how on small scale to sustain themselves. And then we have just about completely obliterated that, where folks in the cities don't know that they can grow their own food for a whole year in the city and can it. Hopefully we'll get Starz on here. But if not, let's see. Hey, we got my good friend Liz Davenport on here. Liz says, I wish I could vote for you, Spence. Thanks a lot, Liz. Liz and I knew each other from the Navy. We were both hospital corpsmen, and we were in the independent duty corpsman specialty. And that's where we met, was in training to be independent duty corpsmen. So basically, we were the Navy's cheap doctors or cheap physician's assistants. It was really a heck of a way to spend a career. I miss it a little bit, but I'm enjoying what I'm doing now as a public school teacher a whole lot. So, all right. Stars and Aries. I see the screen is black. Shall we back out and try again? What do you think? Oh, stars almost came. Let's see. I'm going to remove you from the stage and then try the link again if you could, Stars and Aries. Let's see if we can do it again. All right, here we go. Did that work? All right, Copycat says, every few years, folks discover new ways of growing organically. That's actually something that used to be commonplace knowledge. Absolutely. No doubt about it. Yeah. We would just keep remembering what it is that our grandparents knew innately. All right, let's see. Stars into the studio. At the stage. Did that work? All right, I'm going to send a new invite. Let's see. All right, so let's look and see now on a little bit of a larger scale in another state, Wisconsin, what they're doing to grow things organically and also regeneratively. Of course, they go hand in hand. So let's find out what they're doing in Wisconsin. I'm going to put that back up on here, and then we'll try and see while we're watching this if I can get Stars on, hopefully.
The Bergs do everything they can to prevent their limited topsoil from reaching the flood-prone Pecatonica River, which weaves through their 540 acres of cropland. The family's dedication to conservation ag all started with Michael's father, Byron Berg, who installed contour strips to prevent erosion in 1952 and always told his kids, "We don't really own the land, we're just taking care of it for the next generation."
The biggest part of his life was installing good conservation knowledge and benefits for this farm, and to make sure that his son and daughters knew conservation is important. We grow alfalfa grass. We just started growing fescue, Timothy brome orchard grass on the bottoms next to the Pecatonica River. We also grow corn and soybeans. The corn is for our steers. And we've installed terraces along our row crop lands on parts of the farm and waterways, because lots of places maybe get 6 inches of rain in a year. We might get 6 inches in a day, and we can't afford to lose a half an inch, let alone any soil. And that's why we've tried to make sure that we have no-till planting and or have grass and alfalfa on these hills so that we have near zero soil erosion.
Berg is the founder of the Pecatonica Pride Watershed Association, bringing together outdoors enthusiasts, farmers, and landowners to improve the river and inspire others to embrace conservation practices. All right, let's send it over to McCain Vogel now for today's Cover Crop Connection. McCain.
Thanks, Noah. Well, this year's No-Till Farmer Conservation Ag Operator Fellow is Watertown, Wisconsin no-tiller Tony Pyrick. Tony has been using cover crops and practicing no-till on his farm for decades. Let's watch as Tony grabs a shovel from his truck and digs into a field of cover crops to check out the soil structure.
Yeah, that's what you want. There's your soil texture. Yeah, there really isn't. Well, if the cover's out there, you keep it living. We did a few years ago, our group did a weekly check on living on cover crops and rye. And our crop consultant had to break the frost every week, and he checked the root depth. It's growing every day of the year in the winter. It doesn't stop growing. The roots were deeper and deeper and deeper every week he did it, but you can just see the root structure.
How does this look compared to maybe, I don't know how long you've had this field, but
It's been for over 10 years or more.
so has it changed a lot?
Oh yeah, all the soils is just. I remember on that we used to not own that farm until the 80s. That 80 over there, Campbell driveway. And then we used to plow it back in that'd be early 90s already. We took it over in bought it in 84, and it could have been the late 80s, but it was so hard. We rotary hoed it 2 to 3 times to get the corn out of the ground. we weren't educated. When I was like 10 years old, I was running a disc it 3 times and have a real nice soft soil. And we didn't know any better. You wanted that, you wanted to sink in that deep. Oh, that's going to absorb all the water and then turn it nothing concrete. And that over there was just like, there's no color, compared to what this is now. That's what you want with that soil degradation.
Be sure to check out the first installment of the 4.
So y'all, that's something that I find interesting. Here I call myself at the Hillbilly Think Tank, call myself the educated hillbilly. Well, part of my current education is, like he said, uneducating myself of what I thought I knew about gardening. So getting back to what is it that the natives knew about our soil here in the United States and how to maintain it and regenerate it and keep it natural. And the big part of that is realizing that tilling and getting rid of all of the other flora and fauna in the garden is actually making it possible for every rain to wash away the topsoil. It's not helping to, like he said, get more water into the soil. It's helping the water to wash away the soil. So that's really key to understanding what we're talking about here. So, and the big thing too is he's talking about getting our soil back to a point where it's healthy. We have to have nutrients in the soil. We have to have our, normal bacteria and yeasts and, microflora and fauna in the soil. Keep the earthworms alive and healthy to keep on making their castings, that's their poop, to make new and nutrient rich soil, to give us the micro layers more and more and more every year, which is full of nutrients. So to do that, we've got to get back to realizing what it is that we've lost in America. This poisoning our soil, in my opinion, with industrial agriculture, we're poisoning our soul too. We've lost a connection to our own land and our own properties. I've only got less than an acre here, but getting into regenerative farming, urban farming, since I'm such a small scale, even though I live out in the county, this is something that is good for my soul. It's good for me to know that, since my wife has had cancer, I really want to make sure that I am doing nothing to help create that problem again in our life. I want to make sure that I can grow food that I know has no poisons in it. I know where it came from. I know what was in the soil that the food came from, and I know that it has the vitamins that we need. So, that goes to, hey, you need to basically, anything I have that's trash, if it's not plastic or metal and it's compostable, I'm composting it. Everything from coffee grounds, eggshells, vegetable pieces and parts, anything and everything that I can compost, I'm composting. That also goes back to making great soil. Of course, good cover crops create a constant compost. People that throw away their leaves in their yards instead of mulching it, even if you're not going to grow a garden, a food garden, make sure at least your grass even has natural health to it, that you don't have to put on fertilizers and poisons for your grass. If you mulch your leaves as they fall every year, that adds natural vitamins and minerals to your soil. That's just the way that this earth was made and designed. But too many people don't do that. Starz. I'm going to try to add you to the stage again. Did we lose you completely? Starz is doing urban farming, and she is into sovereignty of the soil, and sovereignty of the food chain, letting people claim their food sovereignty. That's a big deal for Starz. Hopefully we can get her on here and talk about it. Yeah, she's saying here, show me what's showing on her screen. Huh. So her face is showing on the screen, her screen. I don't know why it's not showing on mine. I don't know how in the middle of the show cancel my VPN. Let me see if I can do it. Turn the shields off for mine. Try to reload. Hopefully that won't kick us off here. Did I lose everybody? Anybody give me a thumbs up if we're all still here? It looks like 5 viewers right now. Still don't see Starz. Remove her one more time. Okay, Copycat's still there. Awesome. Let's see. Kick from the studio. Starz. If anybody can hear me, try and come on back in. Let's try and enter again. I turned off my VPN, I think, or at least I turned off my shields. Maybe that was what's doing it. I've got to, I guess, not use the Brave software and go back to, unfortunately, Microsoft. All right, really apologize, guys. All right, well, now, if you have any interest in this, if you really realize that you don't want to poison your family and yourself with chemicals that are so common now, and you really want to have healthy food and you want to grow your own food, one of the big things to do, is grab a book by one of Kentucky's best authors ever. He's actually was one of our poet laureates in the past, and that is Wendell Berry. Wendell Berry has written quite a few books of fiction and nonfiction. He's just, man, a great author. One of his books that really turned me on to this, I was already into it and interested in it, but his book, The Unsettling of America, Culture and Agriculture, helped me to understand what we need to do to get back to what it is that we've lost, which is healthy soil and healthy souls. He talks about this being a cultural problem too that we've created, along with the military industrial complex. Hand in hand is the industrial agricultural complex. Like I said, the way we got to this industrial agricultural problem was they decided they had all these bombs and bomb factories after World War II, and they had all this urea and nitrogen that they've been using to make bombs. Now they need to get rid of it. And how did they decide to do it? To give it to all the farmers to put on the soil. So that's a huge problem. So we need to reclaim our soul. And the way to do it is to dive into urban agriculture, urban farming, maintain your sovereignty of your food. That means you are in charge of what you eat and what it has in it and what you put in your body, because you grow it, you see it, you know it. If you don't have the means to do this, get to know your local farmers market. Every major city and minor city has them. Here in Elizabethtown, we've got a great one. It's going to be starting up here again soon. We've also got a lot of Amish and Mennonite farmers. They're growing stuff. We've got other farmers that are, doing small scale farming in our whole region, not just Hardin County. All right, so let's see. Liz, you're making a comment. Let's see what you got. I want to start gardening, but I'm scared. I can understand that. I have lots of seeds. Going to sign up for online classes at the local college. The book Dark Emu talks about all this as well, but in Australia. Very interesting. Well, Liz, again, I highly recommend Wendell Berry. Wendell Berry wrote The Unsettling of America. I'll put his name and title here in the comments. Wendell Berry, The Unsettling of America. So he's also got the subtitle, which I mentioned earlier, but I don't have time really to type all that in. So, but he is calling for us to get back to reclaiming our soil through regenerative farming. It's a fascinating read. It's also not just talking about farming, it's really talking about our American culture, how we need to reclaim this part of our culture, which we've let die off. My gosh, what happened? So I guess I lost my, there it is. Okay. Lost my Facebook feed when I reloaded, but that should be okay. All right. So Starz, are we back? Adding you to the stage. The Starz there. Starz, can you hear us? I mean, if you can even talk to us, we can't see it, that'd be okay. Can you hear us? All right, Starz, if you want to type anything in the comments here, just so we don't lose your knowledge base, because that's really what I was excited about today, that'd be awesome. So, all right, here's a quote from Wendell Berry. All right, so again, Wendell is one of my heroes. And when talking about farming, he said, why do farmers farm, given their economic adversities on top of the many frustrations and difficulties normal to farming? And always the answer is love. They must do it for love. And that was from his book, Bringing It to the Table on Farming and Food. So this quote captures the core motivation behind sustainable farming: love for the land, love for the work, and love for the community. So great farmers love the community. And I know we have a lot of that here in Hardin County. Farmers that truly love this wonderful community, and they would do anything to make sure that we are nutritiously fed and that our souls are fed also. So now another quote from Wendell Berry is, the true measure of agriculture is not the sophistication of its equipment, the size of its income, or even the statistics of its productivity, but the good health of the land. And that came from The Unsettling of America, Culture and Agriculture. So Berry insists that agricultural success is measured by ecological health, not profit or scale. You know, for so many years now, we have been measuring the success of farming by how much money we make, but not by how much health we add to people's life and to the ecology of our community. So as we become aware that we're just losing so much topsoil in farmland, and that topsoil is the soil that had those original nutrients that we were losing continuously, and that the only way that we can now grow crops is with this urea and nitrogen, when they're, and again, those are components of bombs when they're separate, from natural occurring ways of finding them in the soil. So how do we find them naturally in the soil? It's by growing plants that put nitrogen in the soil, like beans, your cover crops. Also by natural mulch. That's again, letting your leaves, your plants live, grow, and die and go back in to make more soil. Natural compost. You walk through the woods and the forest and you find natural compost. You find the woods, right? But in the woods, it's constantly regenerating microbes, regenerating the soil. And we've got just a whole organic flora and fauna growing in the forest. And we should still have that same type of flora and fauna in our soil if we use regenerative farming. All right, so looks like we've got Starz saying, seems like I can hear you, but you can't hear me. Yeah, that really is unfortunate. So if you don't mind coming back on again at another time, and I will make sure that I don't use Brave. I use another server, which should hopefully, I assume that might be what the problem is. I'm not completely sure, but I think that could be what it is. If anyone else has any ideas, but I think that's the problem. All right. Yeah, please. Thanks, Starz. Starz says, absolutely would love to be on again. I would just love to have you. This is how we reclaim our souls, reclaim your sovereignty, which is what Starz will talk about, over your food production and consumption. And don't let anyone else determine what vitamins you have or don't have in your food. That's what we can do if we get into urban farming, and if our large scale farmers go back to regenerative farming. So hopefully next time when Starz is on here, she can talk about this. But Liz, if you're thinking about growing your own stuff, Liz, shoot me a quick size, if you could, of like how much land do you have? Are you on like a lot in the city? Are you like me on a lot but outside the city in the county? I've got, I think, just either under 7/10 of an acre or maybe 8/10 of an acre here on my property. And so I'm raising backyard chickens. I've got honeybees that I need to do a really good check on here either today or tomorrow. I'm also 1.7 acres, 4 acres. Ooh, Liz, you're doing it right. You got it down. That's absolute wonderful. Liz, I can't remember. I think you've told me, but where are you at now state-wise? Which state are you in? So 1.74 acres, you're going to be able to do wonders for yourself there and your family. Suburbs, Mechanicsville, Maryland. Awesome. So you're in a great place for growing. Yeah, great heritage of growing stuff there. And that's going to be absolutely perfect. So we'll keep on coming back to this because, again, if we want to, there is a connection. If we want to keep from going to these forever wars, well, let's get off of the tit of the military industrial complex. Let's get off the tit of the industrial agriculture complex. That's what Wendell Berry talks about. They are linked together. So I'm raising chickens. So I got my own eggs, constant supply. My 14-year-old right now has hatched out 3 chicks from our chickens that we have. We've got about 5 more on the way. We're going to give some to our neighbors down the street that I met yesterday when I was out meeting constituents and talking to folks that I hope will vote for me for magistrate here in District 3. He lost some of his chickens recently to a predator in the area. So we'll help him replenish. And that's also what this urban farming thing is about. All of us sharing and caring for each other, sharing seeds, sharing animals. But the next thing that I want to do is raise either rabbits, probably raise some rabbits. That's a great source of protein, easy to raise. I've done it before when I was young. Considering a goat, although I don't have as much land as Liz, I think if I had 1.74 acres, that'd be perfect. Goat milk is a very healthy milk, easy to milk a goat if anyone's never done it. I used to do it as a kid. Goat milk is also not a problem when it comes to people that are lactose intolerant. It doesn't have the lactose that many breeds of cows give you for cow's milk. So yeah, Liz, let's get back to self-sustaining. And Liz says, I've heard recommendations of meat bunnies, vice chickens, because they're easier and cleaner to maintain. And yes, they are, Liz. So another thing, and I guess we could just do a whole thing on this, combine it with the approach to not going to war anymore. Meat bunnies are a great way. They're actually the most healthy source of protein that you can have is rabbit meat. No fat, very heart healthy. Much easier to raise than chickens. They reproduce so quickly and grow so quickly. They also, if you did what I did when I was young, I would have worm boxes underneath the chicken cages. So I would have about yay much soil with worm beds is what it was underneath my chicken coops. And as the chickens basically took their craps and their pisses, that would fall down into the earthworm boxes, and that would give them that soil plenty of food for the worms to turn into even richer, better soil full of natural nitrogen. And then we could take that and spread it on the garden every year. So yeah. Now, of course, chickens produce a good amount of natural fertilizer too, but you have to be careful to keep them out of certain parts of the garden, depending on what you're growing, because they'll eat that. I'm thinking about adding guineas to my backyard because they don't eat most of what you'll grow in the garden, and yet they will also eat the problem bugs that can come in to your garden. So guineas are another thing that you can think about, but I definitely highly recommend rabbits. Absolutely. Another thing that we're growing here is quail, although we didn't have a really good luck with the first ones we've hatched out. We lost a lot of the eggs that we bought and purchased, and then we're hatching in our incubators. They didn't hatch. I'm not sure if my niece just didn't know what she was doing that first time around. And then, yeah, we lost quite a few of the chicks that we did have. It looks like we're down to about 6 males, don't have any hens. So I've got to do some reinvestment there because quail are actually very, very good alternative to chickens. Smaller, but they, produce meat quickly and they grow to maturity quicker than chickens do. So something else to consider, Liz. Anyway, quite a few things to do. Hopefully we can get Starz on here next time, and we'll talk about all what she's doing in the large metropolitan area she lives in. I'll let her decide if she wants to tell us exactly where that is or not. But all right, y'all. Next thing. So let's look at, again, what this military industrial complex is giving us right now. Because just don't forget, again, our continuous wars for oil feed into the military industrial complex. And they also feed right into industrial agriculture. If we're growing our own fruits and vegetables, then we don't need as much of this military industrial complex as we have right now. We also don't need the industrial agricultural complex, which needs the petroleum industrial complex to go along with it. So let's look at a little bit of what's happening right now, which is connected to all this before we close out here today. So right now, we know that Iran has launched missiles at Diego Garcia. So Liz and I, both being Navy veterans, we know that that is an island that is owned by the Brits, but they allow us U.S. naval forces to also bring ships in there. So we've got a submarine tender that I used to be stationed on when it was in Sardinia. It's since moved to Diego Garcia, which is in the Indian Ocean. And that submarine tender, of course, tends to submarines that come in and pull in there. So the Iranians have launched a missile at that base, that joint United Kingdom, British, and USA base. This is not good, y'all. They've shown that their capabilities are much more strong than we expected. Also, starting tomorrow, ICE will be checking identification of individuals at airports across the country, whether they're flying or not, to include individuals assisting loved ones with their luggage. So if grandma isn't a citizen yet, she just got a green card or less, don't let her go to the airport with you to assist you with the luggage. There's horrible footage right now being shown of this already happening, right? So ICE will also be stopping people for identification ahead of checkpoints per Diaper Dan's border czar, Tom Homan. So this is nuts. So here's an example of that actually happening right now.
Help me! I don't know how to let me quit. I have my payment. Help me, please! My daughter! Human being! My
So again, that's happening right now. Already, it's starting. So we've got to make sure that we get a handle on this whole thing. It's just, we are going so far overboard. It's ludicrous. But don't let grandma or aunts or uncles or friends, if they've got a green card, don't let them go to the airport with you to take care of your luggage. And if they don't have one, hey, Yonder, how's it going out there in Boston? Thanks, Yonder. Cool to see you. Nice to see you live on here. Yonder saying, yo, cuz, love the think tank. Yonder is a professor at Boston College. Yonder, so honored to have you on here. Liz, this is the next step. ICE expansion and normalization of fear, aggression, and weapons in our country. Yes, Liz, and again, when you and I were on active duty, we didn't wear masks when we went to shoot terrorists. We weren't pussies. But, when I was growing up, and I grew up in the heat and the heart of the Cold War. And we were taught all the time that those horrible commies in Russia, what made them horrible was they asked every every citizen of that nation to show their passport while in their own country. So, having to show your own passport in your own country, that was a sign of a dictatorship. That was a sign of communism, or worse, the Nazis did the same thing in Germany. You had to show your papers at any moment, any time of the day. You had to show your passport. Again, all I learned growing up, the two worst regimes in our history to that point, Nazi Germany, fascist Italy, fascist Spain, communist Russia, communist Cuba. They required people to show passports, and that was the sign of tyranny. And yet here we are. You have to show your passport if they deem you not to look like their version of an American. No matter where you are, they can just walk up and ask you that. All right, Mike V says, spot on, Liz. Terror is the goal because they want oppression. Yes. So again, tonight, I'm dedicating everything I can to how do we get rid of oppression? Well, one of the biggest things we've got to do is get rid of our reliance on foreign oil. We don't need to fight any more wars for oil. Now, I understand that the regime that we are fighting against is an evil regime, and they've actually killed many, many Americans. So I'm not a complete dove by any means. I did a whole career in the military. special operations, regular infantry operations, shipboard operations. So I'm all about the military being used to defend the country and even defend the world when it's called for. But we need to have clearly defined objectives and intentions. Now, let's look at this next thing. If you're going to tell me it's about freedom and that these guys are so dastardly, these Iranians, that we have to go to war, then why is this something that we're seeing right now? Breaking news. The Captain Bone Spurs administration has lifted nearly all sanctions on oil tankers coming from Iran. That's $140 billion worth of oil. Now they're allowed to sell. And who are they selling it to? Russia, we know, and China, but primarily Russia. So they've got all this money now that they can use against us, make more missiles, make more technology, more drones to fight against us. And also, Russia is giving them information to use against us. So there is nothing there that is logical or strategic. And when we've got 5,000 Marines, and again, Liz and I used to serve with the Marines as their hospital corpsmen. We have no reason on this earth to be assisting those evil, evil people in that regime. So don't tell me that this is a war of necessity. There's nothing of necessity about this. Yes, evil regime. Yes, they need to go. But we don't have a clear goal, and we're assisting them in having more money, or almost about as much money as we're telling Congress they have to give us right now. If you know that Whiskey Pete Kegsbreath is saying we need $200 billion to fight this war. $200 billion more dollars on top of the $1 trillion of budget that they were approved and have already with the DOD. So what should we do? Where are they going to get that $200 billion for? That could be a $62,000 bonus for every single teacher in the United States of America. That could be so much health care for every single citizen in this United States of America. We could do universal health care with that for quite a few years. We were told there was no money for the Affordable Care Act when they were fighting over the big, ugly bill. And yet they're insisting they need $200 billion more for this war. And yet we're allowing our enemy to have that same exact amount when they sell their petroleum. This is not right, y'all. There is something extremely fishy in Denmark. Well, actually, in the Strait of Hormuz. More succinctly, there's something very fishy in the White House. So, we know that we're not being told what's really going on. And if we got people in the administration now leaving because they realize this, we've got something going on. Now, they're also talking about starting a draft. Let's hear about it.
Already spent over 11 billion US dollars on this war. We wouldn't tell you that 5,000 US Marines are being redeployed from Asia to the Middle East, potentially in preparation for a US ground invasion of the island of Kart. We wouldn't tell you that over 25 US bases have already been attacked. We wouldn't tell you that Israel is running critically low on ballistic missile interceptors. And for that reason, the US has moved its THAAD system from South Korea to Israel, leaving them fully exposed to North Korea, who have launched missiles at and in the direction of South Korea. And by the way, these THAAD systems cost $1 billion a piece, and there's only 8 of them in the world, of which Iran has already destroyed 4. We wouldn't tell you that with the reduced US military presence in Asia, China has now deployed 2,000 fishing boats off the coast of Taiwan. Many experts are saying this could be a precursor to war. We wouldn't tell you that public support for this war is currently polling at 21%. We wouldn't tell you that the US and Israel are carrying out false flag attacks, hoping to drag US allies in the region into this war. And we wouldn't tell you, of course, that we have no idea what we're doing in Iran.
The question about 4 weeks. It's the typical NBC sort of gotcha type question. President Trump has all the latitude in the world to talk about how long it may or may not take. 4 weeks, 2 weeks, 6 weeks. It could move up. It could move back.
We wouldn't tell you that we've already spent over $11
billion. $11 billion. It's actually 12 billion, according to a member of the White House staff. So $12 billion, and that's not including Venezuela excursion, the Ecuador excursion, the planned excursion in Cuba. So for all those who said they voted for this guy because he's the anti-war guy, as a combat vet, I'm not buying it. All right. So let's get off of the military-industrial complex tit. All right. I want enough money for us to defend our country day and night. No doubt about it. But I also don't want to see any more people like my brother, my father die from their war wounds. I don't want to see more American lives cut short, like Sergeant Pennington, who we are going to bury Friday here in Hardin County, or like the tech sergeant from Bardstown. No, it's enough. Unless you can tell us for sure what it is that we're doing there, what our clear objective is, we don't need to get mired down in a country that's far larger than Iraq. Its coastline, I was mistaken about, misspoke about the other night. It's smaller than ours if you include both of our coasts. But if you compare it to just the coast from Washington State all the way down to San Diego, it's about the same length. That's a lot of coastline to cover. Yeah, smaller than both of our coasts, or smaller if you compare the West Coast and say West Coast is from Alaska all the way down to San Diego, then yeah, it's much smaller. Or if you compare it to Maine to Florida, still smaller, but it is same size as the coast from Washington State. So, all the way down to San Diego. That's a lot of coastline. That is a lot of area for our Marines to cover if we send the Marines in. We did not have Iraq under control for real when we finally turned it over to them. Yeah, it's different than it was when the dictator there was in charge, but not by much. So, and again, we put the Shias in charge in Iraq, and the Shia Muslims are the same style that are the leaders of Iran. So those are two allies now. So if we go into Iran, we won't just be fighting Iranians, Persians. I guarantee you, we'll also be fighting folks from Iraq, because that's two Shia majority nations right next to each other now. And yeah, the Persian military, the Iranian military, has been operational in Iraq ever since we eradicated the Ba'ath Party and disarmed the Sunnis in Iraq. The Sunnis were the minority there, but they had been the leaders under the dictator that we took out. So, all right, y'all, I've gone on long enough as it is, but again, this is all about, let's get into regenerative farming. My next goal is to have solar on my house so that I can charge my electric vehicle by solar power and completely disconnect from from these systems. Y'all, here in Hardin County, we know that our Kentucky motto, united we stand, divided we fall, that is absolutely the key to being one of the best counties in this state. We know that if we love our neighbors as ourselves, then we will never fall apart because we will never be divided. So with that, bless your corazon. Have a great rest of the weekend. And remember all of our troops, sailors, Marines, airmen, coasties deployed. Have a great one. And please like and subscribe.
Be